we need to exercise these virtues in order to like kind of allow everyone into the mathematical community, right? It's like, no, like math can be an important part of your life. And that sounds kind of silly when you say it, but I think it's true. It can be something that enriches your life. If you think about the kind of person you want to be, and of course you're the kind of person you want your kids to be, and you try to kind of map out what that looks like, obviously there's lots of different things you're going to have to do, but mathematics is like a really powerful tool for doing that.
Hello and welcome to the Making Mathematicians podcast. I'm Zach and I'm here with my brother Alec and my sister Cass. We're the creators of Making Mathematicians. It's an online course that shows homeschool parents how to learn and teach real math. In this podcast, we're going to be answering your questions about how to learn and teach real math. If you'd like to learn more, check out the complete Making Mathematicians course at makingmathematicians.org. All right, today we're going to have a book discussion. We're going to be talking about Mathematics for Human Flourishing by Francis Su. So this is a book that we refer to in the course, and it's in a list of books that we recommend people can check out. Oh, we have a physical copy. Cass is our physical copy person. Yeah. I'm a digital book kind of guy. But so let's just dive right in. Let's get some first impressions. What are some thoughts we had while reading, and then we can go from there. You wrote a great summary of it in the reference in the list that we give in the course, so you could just
in our course resources it says Mathematics for Human Flourishing by Francis Su, an inspiring insistence on the importance of mathematics as a means for developing human virtues, and a call to remove barriers of entry to all those who could benefit from studying math. Yeah, I stand by that. I hadn't read it in a long time, but
rereading it now
with everybody.
It's a good definition.
I think it's more or less the same idea. Okay, so this concept of human flourishing, this is like a concept in Aristotelian ethics, right? In Aristotle, the idea is to flourish as a human being. I'm going to simplify this too much. Close your ears if you are an Aristotelian. But the idea is to flourish as a human being, you need to have the qualities and capacities that make for being good at being human, essentially. And those are called the virtues. And there are lots of virtues. Aristotelianism obviously was like aligned with the different major religions in the West, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, for a long part of history. And so, it sort of has influenced those religions and been influenced by them. But kind of vanilla Aristotelianism, you develop the virtues that you need to be good at being human, and that's called flourishing. I hope my philosophy professors never hear me explain this, because that was so simplified. I've left a lot out, but that's the idea. And his argument is essentially he goes through these different he presents them as sort of these human values, right? Things like freedom and justice and love and beauty, as well as some others that are a little more off the wall, like play and struggle. But his point is that attached to each of these values are virtues that we need to develop in order to obtain these values and flourish as human beings. And he kind of goes through how, on the one hand, how math can help us develop these virtues, but also how we need to exercise these virtues in order to like kind of allow everyone into the mathematical community, right? That's my summary off the top of my head.
Why bringing them in is so important too. Which
I
feel like we did kind of cover in our last book discussion with Uncle Petros. That felt like one of the major themes of the book, that he just was totally isolated, and that's kind of what broke him in the end.
That's true. He did not exercise the mathematical virtues. Only some of them.
In some ways that was an interesting book to start with, because it was everything not to do, and this book is everything to do. So it's contrasting. I feel like a book like this, I feel like will really appeal to people, especially kind of in the homeschooling sphere of like a lifelong learner and love of, because it's a little bit more. This is very much not like math to pass tests, you know what I mean, or math to get into college. Yeah. This is like what it actually can do for you as a person. So I think that's interesting.
And I think this is a good book to do early on because it illustrates and it discusses the idea of why math is important. Because we've kind of said real math totally throws out all the drilling, all of the worksheets you do as a kid or in grade school traditionally. And if you're in that system, you know that you're doing it to pass tests, to get into college, and theoretically there's this idea of like, oh, I'll use this. Obviously, you won't actually use any of it other than like basic arithmetic, but
you could.
In most,
I'm just kidding. Yeah, most
you could, but like the way that we learn it, you're not gonna remember enough of it for it to be useful to you in your life. It's not like we like to make these arguments about math being useful or not being useful, and it's just always kind of, I've always seen it as being kind of muddied. There's this just weird kind of awkward, like, well, no, math's really good for you. It's good for your brain. But the way that we do it, it's not really that good for your brain. It's not really doing that much. Your time is better spent elsewhere, probably. And I know a lot of homeschool parents who just kind of say, nope, we're going to focus on the things that are more worthwhile. And yeah, okay, we'll do our little math worksheet. Maybe we'll do it every day. Maybe we'll read a book, or they're trying to find their own way to do it, but they're not seeing the importance of math because the way it's presented, I would argue that it's not that important the way that it's taught in grade schools, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this Human Flourishing obviously is critical, like it's huge. And like he says in the book, it's not, math isn't the pinnacle of everything, the most important thing you could ever do, but it's exciting, and well, there's a whole book on it, on what math is. There's many books on it.
No, yeah, I think that's, well, I think if you think in these terms of developing virtues, especially developing kind of the capacities and qualities that you want to have in order to like live a fulfilling life, or whatever you want to call it, to flourish as a human being. I think that does kind of change the way you approach education like this. And I mean, people talk, like you said, people talk about, oh, math helps you develop critical thinking or whatever. But that's something you hear a lot. Or you hear worse. You hear people say math helps you'll learn to like follow instructions, precisely without questioning, which I'm like, is that a virtue? That seems a little, I guess the capacity to carefully follow instructions
math will teach
useful.
You how to be a good sheep. No.
Right? Well, that's the thing, and people talk about it that way, like, oh, employers want, like, I remember being told as a kid, like, employers, want employees who can follow instructions carefully, and I'm like, again, I think being able to follow instructions is maybe important, but I don't know. I think employers probably want employees who are creative thinkers and can work with a team and can, sort of, have kind of empathy for other people and understand, the dynamics of what's going on and look for ways to do things better. And those are all the types of virtues or qualities that you can develop. I mean, those are the sorts of things he talks about in this book, the things you can develop by doing kind of real mathematics where you kind of have to, like a lot of math that he talks about, a lot of math is collaborative. A lot of it involves, I don't know, working with other people or seeing outside the box, or, kind of being able to break down a problem. Oh, he talks a lot about like perseverance. A lot of it, has to do with just kind of keeping at something for a long time. And those are the sorts of things that, those are the sorts of qualities that, I don't know if that's what employers are looking for, but those are the sorts of qualities you should want to have as a human being. I think employers like those, but more importantly, kind of like, what kind of a person do you want to be? What kind of a human being do you want to be? Yeah.
As a parent, that is what I'm trying to train in my children. That is what I'm trying to teach them, how to have these skills, how to be creative, be problem solving. Be cooperative, be, work in unity with people, appreciate everyone, learn how to meet them on their level, which this book talks about quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is like kind of consistently felt amongst like homeschooling families. Like I remember talking to our cousin and talking to her about kind of math and all these things. And there was a moment where she was like, well, what is like the point? Because she was homeschooling her kids, and she's like, yeah, like you want them to do well in college or something, and yeah, you want them to have jobs, but obviously there's like more to it. And then like as we were talking about it more, she was like, she kind of came to this conclusion, kind of this realization on her own, where she was like obviously like part of it is just having kids that are like grow up to be like happy and fulfilled and like capable, you know, and that's like a big piece. And if that is the goal, then learning real math would be a pretty significant piece of that.
Yeah, and
definitely.
I could share a little anecdote this week of how just in reading this book. Okay, so one of my favorite parts of this book was he shares a story about driving down a sketchy road in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of his family and a ton of luggage in the car, and they get stuck on a rock. So the tires aren't quite, I guess, they're stuck on a rock. And there's a little diagram and everything, and it explains this. And he instantly, mentally is like, oh, there's this famous math problem about a truck trying to go under an overpass. And he's like, obviously these two questions are similar. Which, first of all, my first thought was... Interestingly, I found it very interesting that this is my first thought, considering how much time I spend thinking about real math now. But my first thought was, how is a question about a truck going under an overpass a math question? And then I felt embarrassed that I had thought that. But my second thought was, wait, how are they the same? Because it seems like a different principle. One is not high enough and the other one's too high. And he just talked about how, in this sort of spirit of problem solving, my family's trying to find help of someone to come get them, and I'm thinking through there's got to be a way to solve this. As a mathematician, I am equipped to solve this problem of a sketchy road and a car getting stuck on a rock. And I thought that was so cool. He did solve the problem. You
got to read the book to find out.
How did he get the car off the rock? Right. And so the next day I'm trying to reorganize something, and it was like, okay, I have a finite space, and I'm trying to fit things in my finite space. Obviously, this is a math problem. And suddenly I was looking at different solutions and looking at it in ways that I might not have previously, when I was just an overwhelmed mom going, I need to get rid of another stroller because having, I can't do this.
How many strollers do you have? Now I'm distracted by wondering about your stroller capacity.
Alex going to come up with a math question about...
You have enough. Enough strollers.
I am getting rid of 2, which means that I have at least 2, and I might also have another and a wagon. So anyway, obviously that is a problem. But instead of just jumping to the... It was cool to see things in a different light and try to jump to that problem solving instead of just focusing on the problem.
And I think that's a good example of the kind of thing he's talking about, because obviously, I mean, even if you don't need some mathematical proof for that type of problem, fitting things into spaces, it's just, I think the virtue here is sort of that confidence, the kind of immediately the ability to view problems as things to be solved rather than things to overwhelm you, or those are the sorts of qualities that you develop. That is, even when you're not doing math per se, there's still things that are incorporated into your character, essentially, into who you are as a human being, that allow you to flourish, that allow you to kind of be happy and even keeled and feel in control of your own life and that sort of thing, that you can learn by doing, and that you develop inside yourself by doing mathematics. I think we used to talk about this in other series, like playing a sport or whatever. Like when kids play sports, we used to talk about it builds character, right? And the same with doing other things, like doing art. Doing art might be a practical skill sometimes, in some cases, like being able to draw or something. But I think it also just kind of changes you as you do it. You become maybe more observant, or you become, just you get good at persevering even when things don't work out. And, there are lots of things that can help. Like I said, most of, if you play like soccer as a kid, the ability to play soccer might not seem that important for your future life unless you're one of the few lucky people who get to be a professional soccer player. But, the idea, and I think we're all used to this idea when it comes to sports, is that it lets you develop certain things about yourself, like playing on a team, working through pain or whatever it is, that you're able to like take with you as a human being. And I think that's the same. That's the same with almost anything you say, but it's certainly the same with mathematics.
It's like if an adult, you're trying to convince kids to play soccer, and you're like, I have to kick soccer balls every day, and I'm so glad I learned that skill.
Yeah, no, that'd be silly.
And I'm like, wait, I was lied to. I don't have to do that.
But I think that this is something important for us to realize as parents too, that we're learning this to teach to our kids, but this is going to help us as parents as well. It's going to help me manage and organize my life. It's going to help me problem solve in a tricky situation, which I'm constantly in as I'm the mom of, some rambunctious kids. And so this whole math course is for parents, and it's not just for parents to teach their kids, but the whole point is that we gain the skills as parents, and it's going to help us too. It's going to help us teach our kids, but it's also going to help us too. And that's cool. That's been kind of really cool for me to realize this week, and has made me extra excited to share this with other parents.
Right. Well, that's the red sharing with other parents. I was talking to Zach about this the other day of like how to communicate, and I can't quite find the right phrase for it, but it's like, no, like math can be an important part of your life. And that sounds kind of silly when you say it, but I think it's true. It can be something that enriches your life. I was thinking, just to kind of like broaden what we're talking about, at the very end of the book, he has like a list of virtues attached to like each of these values, and there's kind of a lot. There's more than I realized. But maybe just like reading through it real fast. He talks about like under the value of exploration, he talks about imagination, creativity, expectation of enchantment. Under meaning, he has story building, thinking abstractly, persistence, contemplation. Under play, he has hopefulness, curiosity, concentration, confidence, patience, perseverance, ability to change perspectives, openness of spirit. Under beauty, he has reflection, joyful gratitude, transcendent awe, habits of generalization, disposition towards beauty. Under permanence, he has trust in reason. Under truth, he has thirst for deep knowledge, thirst for deep investigation, thinking for oneself, thinking rigorously, circumspection, intellectual humility, admitting error, confidence in truth. Under struggle, he has endurance, unflappable character, love that word, competence to solve new problems, that's kind of what we were talking about, self-confidence, mastery. Under power, he has skill in interpretation, definition, quantification, abstraction, visualization, imagination, creation, strategization. I should have read these before, make sure I can pronounce them. Humble character, sacrificial character, encouraging character, a heart of service, resolve to open or unleash creativity in others, resolve to elevate human dignity. Under justice, he has empathy for the marginalized, concern for the oppressed, willingness to change the status quo. Under freedom, he has resourcefulness, fearlessness in asking questions, independent thinking, seeing setbacks as springboards, confidence in knowledge, inventiveness, joyfulness. Under community, he has hospitality, excellence in teaching, excellence in mentoring, disposition to affirm others, self-reflection, attention to people, vulnerability. And under love, he has love, the source of and end of all other virtues, which is true. So anyway, I just kind of like, we were talking a lot about like self-confidence, but it really is really broad. Like there's just like a tremendous amount of, like I said, these qualities of the sort of, if you think about the kind of person you want to be, and of course you're the kind of person you want your kids to be, and you try to kind of map out what that looks like, obviously there's lots of different things you're going to have to do to develop that kind of a character, but mathematics is like a really powerful tool for doing that. across like a wide array of these virtues. And I think that really, I don't know, he really brings that across in the book. So yeah.
If I wanted to, I would love to highlight another one that he talked about that kind of caught me a little bit off guard, was he talked about truth. And I've been into philosophy for years, and I have lots of discussions about truth with people. But he came out and was like, no, in math, you can find answers that are always true. And there are things that have been proven, that were proven anciently, that are still true today. It is one of the few, uniform things, which kind of just blew my mind, especially since our knowledge and understanding of science is constantly adapting and changing. Even when we find something that is true, our understanding of it might deepen in a way, so it's like, okay, well, yeah, this law might not necessarily, calling it a law, might not necessarily be the most accurate thing, but with some of these math principles or theorems or whatever, these proofs, they're still true today. And that's so cool to think about that in context of essentially imaginary objects and imaginary, things we create with our imagination have truth where almost nothing else does in this world. And that was a cool idea to me, and a cool thing to give your kids, something to be anchored to. I don't know if
that's
anyone
cool.
Found
that's
that
really interesting.
as really cool as I did, but I found that very fascinating.
I've never thought about that in context of a gift you give somebody, kind of this absolute truth that they can hang. Because I mean, it seems almost like is that a truth to hang on to, but I think it is. I think it's sort of like he says, it's sort of talks about a trust in truth, and a thirst for truth that I think is definitely an aspect of mathematics. Because it's true, studying some other things, maybe art or philosophy, there is a sense in which, and I think this is part of what makes them really, really effective, but there is a kind of a sense of detachment, and I think you need that for mathematics. But mathematics does let you, at the end of kind of being detached and just kind of looking at things dispassionately, you do end up with something that you can wholeheartedly grab onto without any hesitance. Yeah,
it's funny because I think in the sense of it, out of a desire to kind of explain or make sense of math, we've done a lot of comparisons, and we I think there's been multiple times, I think we're all, we like art, and so we kind of compare math to art, but then at the end of the day, it's there is an objectivity to math that just does not exist in art the same way. So it is
as
a
much
very
as I love
unique
art.
thing.
Yeah.
It's very distinct in that sense, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And as, like you just pointed out, we're all kind of leaning into the humanities. But that is something that I've heard from people who like math. They're like, no, I go to English classes and it's just different interpretations and whatever, and you don't understand anything. But I sit down with numbers and I can prove something and it's clear and it's clear cut and it's easy to understand. And I've heard that in people talking about that in literature as well. People liking or disliking certain stories or certain characters, wishing things were more vague or less vague, or people, I think, while we have math provides both this opportunity to be endlessly creative and to find endless nuance and to look deeper and to find more, but at the same time it does provide this sort of solid truth, this foundation, which is hard to find in anywhere else.
Yeah, no.
Hard to find anywhere else in the academic sciences. I'll stick to
the humanities or whatever. Yeah, no. The other thing I think is worth talking about in the book, just to finish up. He talks, so throughout the book he kind of structures it in between each chapter where he focuses on one of these values. Yeah. He includes letters from, is his name Christopher Jackson? Is that right? Yeah. Who's this guy who is in prison. What was his sentence? It was for
35 years.
It was 35 years for a crime that he committed as a teenager. I guess it was a number of burglaries. I don't think.
He didn't say no one was hurt.
He said no one was hurt.
Armed robberies,
yeah, but it was just repeated robberies or something.
But yeah, repeated robberies. So he ended up getting hit with a mandatory a minimum mandatory sentence, and he's in prison for decades. And while he was there, one of the things he discovered is mathematics, and he started teaching himself math. And he reached out to Francis Su, who was kind of a major mathematical. He was the president of the American Mathematical Association, I think, something like that. I should know this. You just read over the long title, right? But he reached out to him, and the author, wrote him letters back, and they ended up corresponding. And at the end of the book, they actually end up meeting. He goes and visits him in jail, and he just goes to show how math has become this source of kind of change and learning. And you can tell he's learned a lot since those experiences, and he sort of wishes that he could change what he's done, and he wants to help other people, kind of escape some of the. Obviously, he came from a really horrible background, and he struggled with drug addiction and stuff, even as a teenager, which is just horrible. But through mathematics, this is one of the ways that he's managed to change his life and turn it around. And through this study, it's just a really great sort of case study in how a person can use math to develop these virtues in order to change themselves, and then in order to feel inspired to kind of change their circumstances and to help other people. And you can just kind of see kind of this, and in a weird way through helping kind of inspire this book to change everyone who reads this book. And it's really inspiring to see how this person in this horrible situation is able to transform, and the way that math plays a role in that is just it's so inspiring. I don't know. I just reading all of those letters in the book, just I don't know. It really uplifts me and makes me realize that this is something that's actually really important. Math and education just more broadly is something that can be transformative.
Yeah, you read his letters and you can see how he's in obviously an oppressive situation. He's in a very contained, limited. He doesn't have a lot of resources. He doesn't have privacy. He doesn't have anything that you might think you need to flourish. And yet you read his letters, and it's obvious that he's flourishing, and he's building a community. He's tutoring other people in math and helping them get their GEDs, things like that. And it's, like you said, it was very inspiring.
Yeah, it's a very inspiring book. If you're not sure why math is important or what it can do for you, this is a great place to start.
Thank you for listening to the Making Mathematicians podcast. We hope our discussion has helped or inspired you in your effort to learn and teach real math. If you have a question you'd like to ask us, please leave a comment or email podcast@makingmathematicians.org. If you'd like to learn more, check out the complete Making Mathematicians course at makingmathematicians.org.